It is my great pleasure to introduce Ramsess, the Executive Director of the National Press Photography Association, which is now based at the University of Georgia. Akili is a Pulitzer-winning picture editor and former director of photography for the Orlando Sentinel. She returned to Atlanta in 2012 to pursue work as an independent visual journalist and editor. Akili has also worked for the Associated Press, LA Times, Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and the San Jose Mercury News. She is also on the advisory board of the Eddie Adams Workshop and the National Association of Black Journalists Visual Task Force. In her spare time, Akili likes to tool around the back roads of Georgia on her Harley. Akili will give a short presentation on the NPPA, and then we'll answer as many of your questions as she can. So please put any questions you have in the chat box. Akili?
Thank you, Lance. I appreciate you all inviting me to be here tonight. MPPA has been a big supporter of the Atlanta Photojournalism Seminar for almost as long as it's been around. And though we're in this virtual world, I usually miss I really do miss the opportunity of meeting everybody in person. But in the meantime, I'll take our time and introduce you to who I am again, who the organization is, and what we're doing to help photojournalists during this time of crisis for both our industry and for our world, frankly. I'm going to start off with a slide presentation that gives you a little, basically the background of who we are, how long we've been around, and what we do. We call ourselves, we are the voice of visual journalists. We are actually the only photojournalism specific organization in the country. There are many other photo organizations, partner with a lot of them, but this is the only organization specific to photojournalists, and we were established in 1946. Kenny Irby once said, "A photographic moment is not the truth with a capital T. It is the sum of moral choices, news judgment, and a series of technical considerations. Photographic reality is a matter of personal perspective. All journalistic reality is." And that is no truer today than ever. I really am here more than anything to present the idea of how important an organization like ours is. If those of you who've been out covering a lot of the news, making world-shaking events such as protests, COVID, whatnot, you know how important MPPA has been to supporting photographers, for fighting for First Amendment access, rights, getting protective issues for them. Go to my next slide here. I can actually skip one here. Hold on. Let me move something around here just a bit. It's my own way here. The National Press Photographer is, we are the leading voice advocating for the work of visual journalists. We are like 4,500 members strong, and we're fighting for working news photographers, videographers, and multimedia journalists. Our primary purpose is stated in our code of ethics, and which is basically a standard in the industry. It stands for the highest integrity of visual storytelling. We promote the highest standards in visual journalism and the credibility of our profession, the responsibility of every member of NPPA. Accuracy in our work, integrity in our relationships with the public we serve are essential qualities for all professional visual journalists. We vigorously promote freedom of the press. I mean, we've been in several cases. I mean, Mickey Osterreicher and Alicia Calzada are names that you should be familiar with. We have been dealing with numerous cases of photographers being arrested. You basically should have Mickey and Alicia's numbers on speed dial because we are there to help photographers who are arrested. We are joined with the Freedom of Defense Fund and helping photographers deal with their legal cases in some of these issues. We are working with not only the First Amendment access issues, we have copyright access, credentialing, cameras in the court, as well as dealing with unlawful assaults, which many photographers are experiencing on both from the law enforcement and the protesters we're covering. So our work benefits not only individuals, but the public at large. The NPPA visually, we're also in education. It's a huge portion of what we do. We've recently reinstituted our mentorship program, and I hope, and this is not just for students. If you're mid-career, or if you're even a long-term photographer and you're just looking for a new way of giving back or finding new ways of upping your game a little bit, the mentorship program is open to everybody. Please sign up if you have a chance. And although we have the pandemic has canceled a lot of our live in-person workshops, we are working hard to repurpose them through virtual presentations. Like we just recently had the Women in Visual Journalism last month. We have several coming up we're working on for the spring, and keep you posted. This is the picture of our board who's hard at work for you. They're all volunteers, all hardworking visual journalists from broadcast, stills, magazines, freelance, and we're here to help you in this industry. And you can contact any one of us. Our emails are posted on our website, as well as in the jacket if you still have the last printed edition, but you can find our contact information on the website. Some of the things we've done this year to deal with some of the crises, we created the COVID resource guide, which is still listed on our website. In this presentation, the link is there. We created in partnership with our foundation, the National Press Photographers Foundation, the Emergency Relief Fund this spring, and we raised over $40,000 for our NPPA members that we were dispersed in $500 gifts. And we're going to be doing another one sometime this fall. We just haven't set the date to kick that off. We're holding town halls. We've also had a variety of other virtual get-togethers. We're holding safety and legal training for journalists, and we actually have a drone workshop coming up very soon. So be on the lookout for that. Here are some of the few things we've done this year in terms of advocacy. We dealt with public officials and designated news gatherers as essential service. So supposedly we're not supposed to be jailed for going past curfews. We are really working hard with accountability for police who violates journalist rights. We joined with the CARES Act with several other organizations in California that has given us the leeway for freelancers to not be constrained by a well-intentioned but a bad law that made it difficult for freelancers to make money. We worked to help, which led to helping to overturn the California AB5 law. As I mentioned earlier, we've partnered with the Press Freedom Defense Fund, a legal advocacy initiative. This is an organization through us you can turn to if you're arrested, get in trouble on a legal situation when you're out covering an assignment. We're also working with the claims court for small claims court copyright to make it more affordable for photographers to bring suits against people rip off of your copyrights. Other benefits. We continue to host, as I said before, webinars, and hopefully soon we're working on transforming many of our spring workshops into virtual workshops. We're constantly advocating on journalists' First Amendment rights and access. We're continuing to provide funding for journalists and also partnering with other organizations, finding more funding. And though one of the things we had to give up ourselves to save money under the financial crunch we all experience is we're not printing the News Photographer magazine, which you can find a full edition on PDF on the website behind our paywall if you're a member. As I mentioned earlier, we have mentorship programs for student visual journalists, but we've expanded it for emerging as well as experienced photographers. And we'd like for it to go back for the experienced photographers to give back to. So please contact us if you're willing to be a mentor or you're interested in getting a mentor. Okay, get the button to work here. Like I said, we just finished having the Women in Visual Journalism Conference, and I'm sorry you missed it. We had probably over 200 people in and out watching that, and got a lot of little gift bags we gave out for that. These are the events we have coming up this spring. As I said, they will be virtual. We're still going to try and have the Northern Short course, a version of our news video workshop, an advanced video workshop, multimedia immersion workshop, and later in the year, the Women in Visual Journalism workshop. New seminars we have coming up dealing with visual leadership, literacy, diversity, and ethics, and also another town hall talking about the state of the industry by mid-January. So please look forward to announcements on those dates coming up. The Best of Photojournalism competition is coming up. You may have noticed we have just recently announced our new chair, Dudley Brooks, Deputy Director of Photography for the Washington Post, and he's assembled a great team for all the various divisions. And the competition will kick off in December. We should have dates announcements pretty soon. So please look forward to that. In the meantime, we still have our monthly still photography clip contest, and we've put on hold the student quarterly clip contest for obvious reasons. So what makes NPPA unique? As I just said, we're the only organization specifically dedicated to visual journalists. We have a 24/7 legal team that aid photographers and navigate legal issues, First Amendment rights, and so forth. Our educational and training programs. This is something that's ongoing. As a photojournalist, you all know that you never stop learning. And we have the type of programs I think will help photographers continue to develop their careers, their skills, and prepare them to have a business to go back to, whether you're working as a staff photographer or you're independent. And we are making a greater, more programs this year are going to be focusing on business related for independent photographers, as that is definitely the direction our industry is going. And of course, we have our premier competitions, and we continue to provide our safety and financial resources. And the News Photographer magazine, if you haven't seen it, it is still one of the great magazines that profiles great photojournalism. Please take a look at it on our website. It is just a treat to the eye, and it really reminds you of what is great photojournalism and to aspire to, and to recognize those who are producing it. As on this last slide here is basically my contact information. You can reach me at director@mppa.org, and my cell phone number is right there. Andrew Stanfield's president is president@mppa.org, and also his phone number is listed there. So with that short slideshow, I just open myself to questions of any that you have, in some of the work that we're doing.
Welcome. Okay. Please put your questions in the chat for Akili. I've got one so far. I have a question from JMC Frank. He says, he or she says, will you still be doing the in-person advanced storytelling workshop in San Marcos, Texas?
At this point, no. The campus basically is still, with the COVID numbers are still rising. It is unlikely we'll be doing any of live events before the summer at this point. We are looking at a possibility of doing a portion of it, something like it, but those are the things we're working out right now. We're trying to adapt some of our programs to virtual, but a lot of people want to have the in-person experience, which realistically, as you all know, is not going to happen until this COVID comes under control. We've had a couple of smaller, I don't know, we had a couple of smaller video workshops this past summer that went very well. And we're just seeing if we can adapt the whole program, if it's feasible to do the whole program virtually. Whether we do or not, we will have some sort of program for visual video workshop this spring virtually.
Okay. Obviously, Akili, there's been some issues for the NPPA because of COVID. For example, the magazine going digital. You just mentioned the workshops. How are things going overall for the organization? Is membership up, down? We've all suffered in some way, at least those of us who are in the freelance business. So, yeah.
Well, initially, we took a big hit. There's no question about it. We had the Northern Short Course, and this literally after we came back from the short course, that everything got shut down, which basically wiped out our programming for the rest of the year, and which is essentially outside of our membership, our revenue for the year. So we had to make some very difficult financial decisions in order to keep the organization going. And part of that was deciding to go all digital for the magazine. Our last magazine issue, printed magazine issue, was the COVID special that was produced. The protests was all digital. One thing we'll be able to do this year through the support of Sony, we will be producing a book for the Best of Photography issue this year. So instead of having an awards program as we usually would, or a special edition of the magazine, we will actually be able to produce a full book back like we haven't done in about over a decade for our Best of Photography display. So that will be coming this year. The other things, but ironically enough, the tragedies surrounding George Floyd's death and the protests brought a surge of membership to our organization, just because the number of people who wanted to have some level of protection, because we were already helping out members who were getting arrested or assaulted, and our press ID, well, it's not a press ID, but basically our membership ID card with press helped a lot of our freelancers deal with being out with law enforcement. So that has been a huge help to us. We grew probably a lot faster than I thought we would. We still need about a lot more members to keep it going, and we're definitely getting ready to jumpstart another membership drive appeal, because members are what keeps us going. And we hope that we can get people to realize that there's power in numbers. It's the power of the numbers of our membership that helped us deal with law enforcement. We've been doing a lot of negotiating. Mickey and Alicia both have been working with various law enforcement officials, helping negotiating the rights of access to photographers in different scenarios. And just dealing with those issues alone is worth gold. That's a major issue.
Fortunately, I haven't needed the services of Mickey during my career. I know others that have, but assuming I did have any legal issues, can you tell me how that works for an NPPA member? How would you?
Literally,
you said put him on your speed dial. So,
seriously, I will actually put out his number is on our website. But basically, you can contact Mickey by email at lawyer@mppa.org is the easiest way to get him. And let me get his number on. I will literally put it in the chat for people. And he's very serious. He is very responsive to people contacting him.
And this may sound like a silly question, but do we pay lawyer fees for him if we employ his
No,
services? How
you
does that
don't.
work?
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't.
Okay.
Actually, what we end up doing is and that's why we partner with the defense fund that actually is providing legal aid for photographers pro bono. Yeah, so let me spell his name out here for you. And it does get what often frustrates us though is people call us after they get in trouble and they're not members and wanting our help, and then they decide, oh, we need your help after all. But Mickey's pretty good about it. If it's something that really affects all of us, it's something like I say, California AB5 would have been a really disastrous bill to have gone through, and I think you would have seen other states copy it. And it, like I said, it was a well-intentioned bill that was meant for like the Uber drivers who were having problems in the gig economy, but it affected us in a very different way. So that's one of the major wins we had this year working with local California attorneys on the case. We've also been very involved with the courts, with the administration in getting a copyright status, a small claims copyright status court for photographers, because even when your copyright has been violated, the ways to fight it is so extremely expensive. It's almost not worth the process going through it. This way, now that they have the special court, it is affordable for photographers to pursue some of these small claims court cases for copyright violations.
Yeah. What was the biggest event that the NPPA became involved with concerning protests or COVID?
Probably, well, we've had more than a couple. Actually, there was a New York photographer.
Can you tell us about them? We'd love to hear kind of some stories here.
Well,
some war stories, as it were.
Some war stories as well. I wish Mickey was here. He tells these stories a lot better than I do. But we did have a photographer who was working for the New York Times and was arrested, and film was taken, and was basically we were trying to charge her with obstruction and all kinds of sort of things, and we were able to finally get her case thrown out, her equipment returned to her, and charges dropped. So they had gotten pretty extreme with us. Lindsay Ozario, I do believe, was the photographer in that case. We also, there's a young photographer. Actually, it's been a lot. There's more than one or two. There's a young photographer out of Maryland who was arrested, equipment taken. We're still in the middle of that case right now too. Equipment taken, film gear taken, was never charged actually, but didn't return his gear and his film. And so we're in the midst of fighting with them on that. And we're partnered with the Defense Fund with working on his case. As far as COVID, one of the biggest things we work with, we got together with several photo directors from newspapers and magazines and freelancers who are not receiving any type of protective gear at all from either the organizations they worked for, whether they were on staff or freelance. And we helped organize gathering gear for photographers working on masks. We had a big mask drive that we were able to collect and disperse for photographers. And we also worked with basically working out safety issues with news organizations. It was just mind-boggling to think that it didn't even occur to them, because a lot of their writers work from the safety of their home or using telephone. Sometimes they'd be out there too, but the majority of the people on the streets were photographers, and there had been no accommodations made for their protections. A lot of photographers were buying their own gear. So we worked with a lot of different organizations to make sure um, the bosses basically were looking out for their people, as well as freelancers needed a place to go to care for themselves. So those are a couple of the biggest things we were working with, and making sure photographers were being safe. We put on if you go to our website, we have a resource. We put together one of the first resource source pages in terms of where to go for how to conduct yourself in the field, how to protect yourself, how to basically some laws of engagement with law enforcement and protesters, how to protect yourself, how to protect your gear, and what to do in certain situations. So that is something, a major resource we still have that's on the website, available to anyone who visits mppa.org.
Akili, have you heard about any members who believe they got COVID by, either working in hospital settings or covering protests? Have you been hearing about any of those types of incidents? I'm just curious.
Not in large numbers, but there have been a few that have come down with COVID after covering assignments. And what we have been able to do with, again, having talks with upper leadership in news organizations, and that people are not being punished for turning down assignments if they feel it's not a safe, if it's not conducted safely, or if they don't have the tools to do an assignment safely. Broadcast has gotten a little easier using booms. Photographers are shooting further distance. Masks, or make sure people are provided with masks and gloves. But there's been more than a handful of photographers who have come down with COVID. No one we had the one death of, the New York Post photographer. I'm sorry, his name escapes me right at this moment. Is the one death that I know of at this point who passed, which was COVID related. If anyone can think of it right off the bat, let me know. I feel bad about forgetting his name at this point. But for the most part, and the other thing, one of the big things I'm hearing is from older photographers in my age range, if you're 50 plus, or who live in multi-generational households, who have faced the dilemma of whether to cover these stories or not because of concerns of health for their families, and basically have had to remove themselves. And it's been, I tell you, one of the biggest stories of probably the biggest story of our generation is to be able to is sitting out doing stories like this. And I include myself in that range. I do a lot of local freelance for both the AJC and the wire services, and I frankly, couldn't volunteer simply because I have an 84-year-old mother here, as well as a 7-year-old granddaughter with asthma, as well as, just being of a certain age myself. You don't just take those chances. So that's one of the big discussions we've been having a lot with photographers in that position. So,
have you been hearing about just economically? Obviously newspapers have been struggling with holding photojournalism jobs for years. Have you been hearing about fresh rounds of layoffs through all of this, members?
what it's kind of a silver lining in a certain way. It's pointed to, again, the value of visual journalists in this field, and storytelling and big events. The jobs still aren't coming back. I think that the diversity issue has made it a little easier for people to be aware that lack of photographers of color, gender diversity, orientation, are big issues. That's probably one of the biggest issues are also facing as an industry. Is that in an era when you're losing jobs, yet you still don't have people who feel comfortable and certain communities under distress or underrepresented, and how do we feed a pipeline that's getting tighter and tighter as the industry goes. So that's kind of a big discussion. One of the biggest discussions I'm having day in and day out with a lot of news leaders right now is how to have diversity as well as the realities of resources with newsrooms today. So a lot more thought, though, I think is trickling down through freelance work. And I think that is probably, like I may mention, a big focus we're going to be making in the next year is the business of photography, because more and more of our members are having to freelance. And very few photojournalists, frankly, have had any business training. I mean, there's been a photographer who's been out there for years. That's been their main source. They've always been freelance, but they were a smaller portion of our membership in previous years. And now I would say easily well over half of our membership fallen under the independent freelance label. And we're trying to address the concerns and the needs of freelancers.
Akili, I know you were a picture editor yourself. I'm kind of curious, what's your impression of how well we're doing as a whole covering protests and COVID and the elections? Do you think it's obviously it's a very challenging time? What's your thoughts about that?
I think it's getting better. There's been a lot of conversations going on across the country with visual leaders, and that's been a big issue. It's very easy to get the exciting bang up, confrontation type shots, but the discussion is, can we get to the meat of the story beyond the stereotype, beyond the flamethrowers and the obstructionists? What is the deeper layers? Can we see something different, broader, and a lot less stereotypical in covering these type of stories? So I think initially it was the usual, but I think in the last few months is definitely gotten a lot more subtle, a lot more nuance, both visually and in the writing and the type of coverage that is being received on the protests. But there's still, I think, not enough, And people, just the nature of our industry right now is run and gun. People want it fast. They want it on the net as fast as they can get it. But some things take time. And one of the things we're working on for a program is visual literacy for newsrooms. What is good visual storytelling, and what are the expectations of a staff or a freelancer when you send out a photographer, or going beyond just sticking a camera in the hands of an experienced writer and telling them to take a picture to go with their story, and to really understand the value of someone who has the experience of telling a nuanced story visually that takes the written story on it to a deeper level. And that's something newsroom leaders are finding out, that it takes both. And it seems sad at this juncture in our industry that we're still telling the same story that we've been saying for forever. But it's making an impact again, and hopefully we're hopeful as an organization that we keep driving that message through.
Yeah, I would say it's always been hard as a photojournalist to earn the trust of your subject, but now you have to earn the trust of your subject from 6 feet away with a medium or telephoto lens potentially. So that's just another element, I'd say, in the coverage you were talking about to deal with.
Well, I think that's where
let alone not getting COVID.
Yes, exactly. I think that's where a lot more research has to go into getting more information on the people you're telling stories about before you get there. So the opportunities of getting something different, even if it's from a distance, has a different nuance, a different perspective than you would get if you just showed up, you know. So I think there's a lot more goes into preparing yourself for how to make a different and story with some depth, with the limitations you have. And there's been some great work out there, you know, has taken some different directions. A lot of great work. I think there's been a lot of great work that I've seen this year.
Yeah, I've seen my share of it in our contest judging already. I hope people stay tuned and watch more of that this week, because there's some really amazing imagery I've seen,
Yeah.
under some very challenging circumstances.
Yeah,
So
we decided actually just recently we're going to make both COVID and the protests their own special category. Otherwise, it's going to overwhelm the news categories, so much like 9/11 did years ago. So, you know, those who haven't done those type of stories, you have a different category for regular news versus the big protests. I mean, because there's so many images. So what is the best of the best out of that type of storytelling will be interesting to see the upcoming contests.
let me just ask. I see a couple more questions just popped in. One is, how many members today are in the NPPA? That's also from JMC Frank.
We're at 40. We're at 40, almost 4,700 members right now.
Okay. And then another question also. Oh, sorry. Let me pop up that question.
We need more. And for
And then,
$145 a year, I'm going to make a push here. Our membership is $145 a year. That is probably one of the cheapest memberships you can get for any of the photo organizations, and you get a lot for that $145. Students, only $75. Students and educators are $75. And you can break those payments up either half or monthly. So think about all the things you can get out of a membership with for $145. You think about that, in a good month, you spend that on lunch. And well, there's a lot we provide, and we're there for you when you really need us. So I'm really pushing. If you're serious about staying in this industry, we're serious about staying around. We really need more people to join us in the fight.
I got one last question I'm seeing here, from Rex Smith. Are more and more photojournalists moving into video?
I think more and more photographers are having that as a skill set to have. I don't see them so much as going into it all the way, but I think you have to be more diverse as a visual journalist, which is why I say visual journalist versus just photojournalist. I think you have to have that skill as an option. But frankly, myself, I've probably done it, but maybe a third of my assignments might have a video element to them when I do assignments. But if you do it well. There's a lot of different ways of learning. Again, come to some of our workshops. Like I said, I'll let you know when we get them up and running again. But I think still photography is still, the power of the still image is still very much in demand. And picture editing, if you're someone who really likes the idea of a job versus freelance, which is a hard hustle, picture editing seems to be the one path that's still very open and actually very much in demand right now. I get more calls, probably the calls I get for jobs more than any other are for some seasoned photographer with photo editing experience or photo editors with some experience. So if you're looking to not necessarily put the cameras down, but have another option of a revenue stream, think about picture editing, you know. And we need good people on the other end. We need good people on the other end making decisions and choosing good pictures. Because right now, too many news organizations took a whack job to their staff and got rid of a lot of experienced size to make those kind of decisions. So you have people who have no, like I said, that why we're developing the visual literacy program, is that now you have a lot of newsrooms that have people with no experience making decisions about what pictures are going into their publications. So we want to change
All
that.
right, Akili, I think we're kind of reached our time limit. Is there anything else you would like to say, just by way of wrapping up about the NPPA?
Well, if you can, join up. Go to a join link on our website. Volunteer. You don't have to be a board member to get things done. There's a lot of work to be done in our industry, and please join. Help us out. Fight the good fight, and improve and keep proving the value of visual journalists out there. And I thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. I guess that's a wrap for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here. Thank you, Akili, for that very informative presentation. I enjoyed the discussion afterwards. And please join the NPPA. I've been a member since, I don't want to say how old I am, but since, let's say, somewhere in the 90s. And so I've always found it's a good value for the money. So if you're just getting into this, I can't agree enough that it's worth joining the NPPA if you're in this business. So
one last thing I like.
Yes, sure.
One last thing I like to say, it's not just for all the things that you can do with it. It's a great community, and with the fracturing of our news industry these days, you can't find a greater community than being a part of the NPPA. So I hope if you're looking for people to connect with, help you grow, help you just support you, you can't find a greater organization, in my opinion, than NPPA. And I've been a member since my college days, which I won't tell you how long ago that was, but it's been a wonderful part of my growth in my career. So thank you again.